lost production for one from Libya, which why you say is small, but in the market where things are tight, that can make a huge amount of difference if the other countries can't pump enough to make up for that.
Do you think the markets have recovered enough, strengthened enough to deal with this sort of shock? Because it is just one sector of a wider economy.
I mean, the point really is we don't know what the shock will be on the economy, and that's what the stock market tries to value. It's trying to value the health of the economy in the future, and therefore the health of company profits. And what this oil rise means is that if it's sustained and it stays at the levels it's at now, then that will have a real impact on Western economies in particular that don't have their own oil production. And if it goes higher still, which is very possible, some analysts are talking about if there's a ripple effect that goes further than Libya to other bigger oil countries, then we could see $200 a barrel. At that price, you'll see the stock market fall significantly.
And then the effect on people as well. I saw reports in WEU and the UK talk of petrol going up. I mean, it hasn't even gone up yet, but the fear that it's going to go up X amount just because of what's happening in Libya.
Yeah, and it's a very fine balancing act. I mean, economically, how these factors all come together is fascinating because, of course, the central banks are holding their interest rates low, but are under pressure, particularly in the UK, to raise them because of rising inflation. Now, rising petrol prices and oil prices will push further pressure on the Bank of England to raise that rate. But at the same time, the reason they're not raising the rates is because the economy is so weak. So to try and balance all those factors together is nigh on impossible. And of course, we've got the decision on Thursday from the Bank of England.
So European markets opened down today. I mean, not that we can predict the future, but are you expecting that sort of volatility, that general downward trend for the next week, couple of weeks?
Until there's some sort of resolution, I think, in Libya, either way, there'll be a lot of uncertainty and nobody can be sure. And to highlight that, the market's back up again now, so it just shows how fickle stock markets are.
Of course it is. Andrew Oxlade there from thisismoney.co.uk. Thanks for your time.
No problem.
Now, activists in Saudi Arabia say security forces have detained at least 22 protesters. That's coming from the Reuters news agency. They were reportedly detained after a protest in the eastern town of Qatif on Friday. This amateur video, thought to show the demonstration, was posted on a social media website. Shia Muslims have been calling for more rights in the majority Sunni country. On Saturday, the Interior Minister banned all demonstrations. Egypt's new Prime Minister due to address the nation later on Monday. Assam Sharif also expected to swear in a caretaker cabinet. On Sunday, hundreds of protesters had gathered in front of the state security headquarters in Cairo, demanding entry to gather documents. Egyptians have been trying to gain access to information gathered by the regime of the ousted President Hosni Mubarak. Live to Cairo now, going to talk to Ayman Mohyeddin. Another speech in front of a nation that's, I guess, used to these sorts of addresses now. What are we expecting?
Well, certainly the incoming Prime Minister is going to have a lot on his plate when he takes office later today, as we expect. Not only is he going to have to allay some of the concerns of the protesters about the trajectory of where Egypt is going, or the transition process at least, but more importantly, he will all have to strike a very important code with the international community. What we can expect from the incoming Prime Minister is to name some very important cabinet positions which have already been circulated here among the media. We are expecting that cabinet to take the oath of office later today. And among some of those very important ministerial assignments include the Foreign Minister, Nabil Al-Arabi, as well as new positions in the Ministry of Interior and Ministry of Justice. So he is inheriting quite a lot on his plate. Most importantly, he will have to be responsible for trying to restore some semblance of security on the streets of Egypt, but also making sure that the protesters feel confident that he will do whatever he can in his power to address their immediate grievances.
Here's the thing though, Ayman, grand scheme of things, how crucial is all of this? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, we're heading towards referendums and elections in the big picture, which will change everything again. I guess you need stability in the meantime, but still, how crucial is all of this right now?
It's extremely crucial. On the domestic front, you have a population that is very much aggravated by a lot of socioeconomic problems that the Prime Minister will have to address with his economic team. At the same time, they want to see substantial political changes in the country. They want to make sure that the upcoming elections and the referendum are free and fair, so that will certainly be a task for the new Minister of Justice. On a domestic front also, you have to deal with the financial issues. The new Minister of Finance government will be responsible for trying to restart the Egyptian economy, try to keep foreign investments coming into the economy, and trying to reopen the stock market despite the fact that it has lost a great deal of confidence. And more importantly, the foreign minister will have to be able to sell Egypt back to the international community, develop those international relations, and perhaps take Egypt in a new direction in terms of its foreign policy.
Just a quick broad brush question, Eamon. How are things in Cairo at the moment? You know, over a month now since things started to go downhill. How close would you say to everyday life being normal?
Well, you know, Egypt has its good days and its bad days. We certainly saw some of the bad moments yesterday evening when protesters once again trying to storm the Ministry of Interior to obtain documents they believe were being destroyed. In that particular incident, the Ministry of Interior was protected and guarded by the military. They didn't allow it. So you have moments when the protesters clash with the military, clash with other demonstrators, and it creates a sense of atmosphere of tension, perhaps a little bit of lawlessness in certain parts of Cairo. But at the same time, throughout the daylight hours, there's a great deal of normalcy with banks opening, with smaller businesses opening, with factories working. There is no doubt that Egypt is going through some serious transition, some serious growing pains, and it is definitely felt. The attitude, though, among most Egyptians remains very optimistic in that the country is going in the right direction, though there are still a great deal of concerns about the democratic process and the pace of change that is taking place.
Thanks to Eamon Mohideen live in Cairo for us. Well, it has been 100 days now since a new transitional government took charge in Somalia, and the occasion has seen pro-government forces take control of a strategic town in the west. An official says Al-Shabaab fighters abandoned the town of Luk on Monday morning without a fight. Across the continent in Cote d'Ivoire, gangs of youths and uniformed police have looted at least 10 homes belonging to politicians allied to the opposition leader Alassane Ouattara. UN peacekeepers have been unable to control the chaos in Abidjan as roadblocks have been set up by government supporters to stop them. Meanwhile, in the west of the country, rebels claim they've captured the town of Toleplu from the government forces. Again, though, the military aligned to Laurent Gbagbo denies that. The trial of former French President Jacques Chirac begins in just over an hour. He is facing charges of corruption dating back to his time as the mayor of Paris. Tim Friend has a preview of this.
In typical style, Jacques Chirac always insisted that he wanted to be treated like any other person facing trial. But that's unlikely to happen. The 78-year-old, one of France's longest-serving presidents, seems to grow in popularity with the French public, who view him with a particular fondness, the envy of other politicians. This is despite the fact that he's the first former head of state to face criminal charges since the Fifth Republic was founded half a century ago.
He is a man who sort of does the right thing at critical times. We've seen it politically at other times, like saying that France should not be involved in Iraq. We've seen it at times where he stood up for the rights of Parliament. And we saw it, of course, that he was very unequivocally against